Hello and welcome to the second episode of this series in which I'm trying to win every stage of the 2022 Tour de France with the rider that won it in real life in Pro Cycling Manager 2022. And we're diving right into the first stage of this episode, the fifth stage from Lille Métropole to Arenberg, a 175 kilometer cobbled stage with no less than 11 cobbled sectors. In real life, the stage was won by Simon Clarke, who beat Taco van der Hoorn in a really close sprint after a really interesting breakaway battle with Edvald Wilsenhagen and Nielsen Paulus, but it was Simon Clarke who took an emotional victory. And so we roll right into our first attempt, but before we're going to watch it, I want to tell you something. I want to talk about my strategy, because this one is not as easy as just waiting for the sprint and then winning it. This time we're going to have to do something different. Simon Clarke needs to be in the breakaway, that's the first part of it. The second part of it is going to be the most difficult part. The second part is actually staying away, making sure one of the breakaway guys wins the stage. And then the third part is it needs to be us. So how are we going to do this? Well, first we're just going to go into breakaway with Simon Clarke and see what happens. So to end our first attempt, I attacked with Simon Clarke and got into the breakaway. It was an 11-man breakaway with some strong riders in it, but they were beatable. So I thought, you know what, if we actually make it to the finish, this is a winnable stage. But when we reached the first cobble stage, the gap was only 2 minutes to the peloton, so it wasn't looking very good, and we were caught with 18 k's to go. So our first attempt was not really successful. But I wasn't going to give up so easily, so on the second attempt I once again went into the breakaway with Simon Clarke. It once again worked. We were a breakaway with 15 guys, a strong breakaway but with beatable opponents, but then Clarke got a puncture, and we were gapped from the breakaway. And we never got back into the breakaway, and we were caught once again by the peloton. But on that second attempt, once again, the breakaway didn't make it to the finish. So I thought to myself, I'm going to try something different here. I'm not only going to put Simon Clarke in the breakaway, who of course needs to win the stage, but also his teammate Guillaume Boivin. Boivin has a good cobble stat and a good flat stat, which means he's going to be a great teammate to help pull the breakaway in front. Putting a teammate in the breakaway has a couple advantages. First of all, Clarke doesn't need to do as much work. The other breakaway companions are not going to complain if Clarke doesn't do any work if Boivin is doing a lot of work. Because Clarke can sit at the back, he has a lot more energy to spare when we get to the final and when he needs to put in his energy to win the stage. The last advantage of putting another guy in the breakaway is that Boivin can keep riding until he's completely finished. This means the peloton needs to ride a lot harder to catch the breakaway. As you can see right now, I put Boivin and Simon Clarke in the breakaway. It was a 13-man breakaway. Once again, the opposition was strong but beatable, and with Boivin in the breakaway as a companion, I really thought, you know what, this could actually be the attempt when we managed to win the stage with Simon Clarke. But once again, when we got to that first cobble sector, the gap to the peloton was just about 2 minutes, so it was not really looking good. At just under 50 k's to go, Boivin had really imploded. He was completely done, had no more energy. The gap, however, was still 1 minute and 40 seconds, so it looked like putting another guy in the breakaway was a good strategy, but now Clarke had to do all the work, and that really showed. Because no less than 20 kilometers later, with still 30 k's to go, the gap was less than half a minute, and with around 20 k's to go, the breakaway was once again caught. So on the fourth attempt, I wanted to expand my chances even more. So this time I not only put Guillaume Boivin in the breakaway, but also the man, the myth, the Latvian legend, Krists Nijlands. We got into a 16-man breakaway with the biggest opponents being Reinhard Jans van Rensburg, Tom Squeens and Cyril Lemoine. And with 2 teammates this time, I really hoped we were going to be able to pull that breakaway away from the peloton. But when we reached that first cobble sector, it was deja vu all over again, because once again the gap to the peloton was only 2 minutes. I was getting really tired of this at this point. But when the Latvian goat Krists Nijlands finally dropped, the gap was still more than 1 minute and 50 to the peloton, and suddenly things were looking a lot more bright. But at just over 20 k's to go, the gap was a measly 40 seconds, and it looked like it was once again not gonna work out. But then a miracle happened. As Guillaume Boivin was dropped from the breakaway, Florian Seneschal attacked from the peloton. And all of a sudden, the peloton stopped carrying. They stopped riding. Ineos was at the front, but they were not pacing at all, and the gap grew exponentially. Seneschal immediately got to the rest of the breakaway and started to pace, but he was already done. And suddenly the gap was almost a minute. This was a big opportunity for me to actually win this stage with Simon Clarke. And so as we entered the next cobble stage, I decided to attack with Simon Clarke to make sure we had a big chance. I got a couple companions with me. Cyril Lemoine, Tom Squeens and Jonas Ruch were in my group. And I thought, in this group, a sprint, I think I'm going to win it. But on the little climb that came next, Frison, Bauer, Erviti and Seneschal caught up. And I thought, oh no, what if the peloton comes? But the peloton was nowhere. On this little climb they went so slow and the gap grew and grew and kept growing, and at 10k to go the gap was almost 2 minutes to the peloton. Unbelievable. And as we got off the final cobble stage, it was certain we were gonna win, but I just was not sure of my sprint. Against Seneschal, against Squeens, against Lemoine, those guys are fast. I just wasn't certain. And so I took a big risk, but I decided to attack with Simon Clarke. Seneschal, he tried to follow, but he just couldn't manage it, and Clarke was actually gone. Clarke was gone, we were gonna win. Oh my goodness, it was gonna work out. Simon Clarke was gone, and the gap grew and just kept growing. He kept going into the last kilometer already, and there's the finish. It was gonna happen. I was gonna make the challenge work. Finally, it happened. Thank you, Guillaume Boivin. Thank you, Christ Nijlands, and thank you, Simon Clarke. We had actually gone and completed this challenge. Let's go! And so I can declare winning stage 5 of the 2022 Tour de France with Simon Clarke in Pro Cycling Manager 2022 as actually possible. I really thought it was going to be a really hard challenge, but we actually managed to do it. Yes, we got a little bit of help from, of course, Guillaume Boivin and the man, the myth, the Latvian legend, Christ Nijlands. We love you guys. But we actually did it, and now we're moving right on. We're moving right on to stage number 6. A 220 kilometer stage from Binge to Longwy. And this stage, you might remember, Wout van Aert went to an incredible ride. He attacked from the beginning and went to the breakaway with Fuglsang and Simmons, I think, and it was an amazing solo ride by him for the most part. But he didn't make it. The stage was won by Tadej Pogacar in a sprint. And because Pogacar is really good in this game, I think this might just be possible. And so as we went on our first attempt, the strategy was not too difficult. There was a 4-man breakaway up the road with Tony Galopin, Kobe Goossens, Lucas Ofsian and Sebastian Schoenberger. And so I put my man Vegard Stakelein at the front of the peloton, just pacing, just making sure the breakaway didn't go too far, and just waiting until the final 25k started to make up my sprint train. And as we enter the last 25 kilometers, our sprint train is set up. We've got Michael Bjerg at the front, Brendan McNulty in his wheel, Mark Hirschi behind him, and then it's Tadej Pogacar. And actually, it's not too difficult at all. Michael Bjerg just rides at the front, keeps going until he gives over to Brendan McNulty at 12 k's to go. McNulty then rides at the front, goes full gas onto the penultimate climb, and at the top of that climb he gives the front wheel over to Mark Hirschi. And as Hirschi crests the climb with Pogacar in his wheel, we're going to take a quick look at the opponents that we have around us. There's Wout van Aert in the yellow jersey. There's Mathieu van der Poel right behind us. There's Primož Roglič in his wheel. There we have the green jersey. Hey, look who it is there, Simon Clarke. We know him very well, of course, but he doesn't look like he's able to win. He's here from Mike Woods. That's his leader in this race. There's also Alexander Vlasov for Bora Hansgrohe that's trying to get to the front. But we're already into the last 3 kilometers. With Wout van Aert at the front, Mark Hirschi in his wheel, and Hirschi is going to start his lead out very soon. Can Hirschi make sure Pogacar is in a great position to win the stage? We're looking very good. There goes Van der Poel. He goes for Jasper Philipsen. Can Philipsen make it work? There's Vlasov. There's Van Aert. Van Aert is going. Can Pogacar still come around? Can Pogacar come still? Yes, he can. Pogacar's coming out there and he's going to actually win it on the first try once again. Tadej Pogacar is winning the 6th stage of the Tour de France in a sprint, just like in real life, in that white jersey also. It's looking very amazing. We once again did it, boys. Yeah. And so, as expected, winning the 6th stage of the 2022 Tour de France with Tadej Pogacar is very possible. And we're moving right on to the 7th stage already, a 176 kilometer mountain stage, the first mountain stage from Tomblain to La Super Planche de Belleville. And La Planche de Belleville was of course the first real mountain of this Tour de France. It's 7 kilometers long, 8.7% average, but the steepest parts right at the end under the gravels, 24%. Now in real life this stage was once again won by Tadej Pogacar, this time in the yellow jersey, and he beat Jonas Vingegaard after a very interesting duel. And we're going to try to replicate that. Now if you take a look at his stats, you can see Pogacar is quite a good climber. So the tactics for this stage were quite easy. Put my team at the front, make sure the 7-man breakaway wasn't going anywhere, and just wait until we got to the foot of La Planche de Belleville to win with Tadej. And as we ride into the foot of the climb, once again the tactics were quite simple. Protect Pogacar with Mica to make sure he spends as little energy as possible, and just start pacing, because the stage is so easy and La Planche is such a short climb relative in stage in this game that going 85 for the whole time is going to be enough. And that's right, exactly what we did. As the attacks started coming in, just make sure you preserve your energy, don't use all your explosiveness at once, and ride to the top. At 4 kilometers from the finish, Roglic attacked. It was a big attack, but we just preserved our energy with Pogacar and make sure we have enough left for that final sprint in which we are going to have to beat Roglic and Vingegaard. And as we enter this little flatter section on which the old finish of La Planche de Belleville used to be, we enter the final kilometer and we start to up the pace. There goes Vingegaard, but we are going to start our sprint now as well. Onto the gravel section, Roglic is still ahead, but we can beat him with Pogacar, I think. Into the final corner, we start our sprint and we pass Roglic with quite a lot of ease, and we win this stage on the first try once again. Great job Tadej, but it's not too difficult. And so also the 7th stage of this Tour de France gets the possible stamp of approval. And so we go to the final stage of this episode, a 186 kilometer hilly stage from Dole to Lausanne. The stage in Lausanne ends with a 4.8 kilometer climb of 4.6% average, with some steep parts that go up to 12%. A very similar stage to the one Pogacar won, stage 6. But this time Wout van Aert won in his green jersey, beating Michael Matthews and the yellow jersey of Tadej Pogacar. And we're going to replicate that. And we roll into our first attempt. And just like Pogacar, Van Aert is quite a good rider. So the tactics for this stage were quite simple. We put Christophe Laporte and Nathan van Hooijdonk at the front to catch the 5-man breakaway of Simon Clarke, Jonas Rutsch, Georg Zimmermann, Jack Bauer and Mathieu Bourgodeau. And then we just waited for the last 25k to start the sprint train. And as we enter the last 25k, the sprint train is set and the tempo is being set firstly by Christophe Laporte, who still had some energy after catching the breakaway. And after him, Steven Kruijswijk, who just rode in the front for a bit. And after him, it was the turn of Tadej Benoot to start hammering it at the front, making sure the team stayed at the front of the peloton. And we were already inside the last 8 kilometers. It was going quite fast. Tadej Benoot was doing a really good job through this cornery bit to keep the team at the front. And after him, it was the turn of Jonas Vingegaard. But the plan was to make Vingegaard pace once we got to the part that went uphill, because Vingegaard is of course one of the best climbers in the world, if not the best. That went exactly to plan. Into the last 5k, Vingegaard to the front, started hammering it, really making sure those fast explosive guys were not able to follow, but he was also tiring out Wout van Aert a bit. So I just made sure he wasn't going to kill Van Aert off, because that would not be good, because Van Aert had to win, of course. I could win with Roglic, but that was not the plan. We had to win with Van Aert. But so far everything was going very great. Vingegaard still at the front, making sure Roglic and Van Aert were at the front of the peloton. And now it was almost time for Roglic to start his effort. Roglic went to the front and he really upped the pace. Van Aert was having a bit of a difficult time following him. There went Mathieu van der Poel on the right side, Mats Pedersen on the left side. But then it was time for Wout van Aert to launch his sprint. Cosnefroid was there, Pogacar was there, but Van Aert was going to win it. Roglic was coming around, but I put him in the wheel of Van Aert to make sure he wasn't winning. And Wout van Aert won it on the first try ahead of Primož Roglic. And Pogacar finished in the yellow jersey in third, just like in real life. Also Vingegaard in the top 5, so it was quite a dominant performance by our team. But we won it again on the first try. Let's go. And so, quite unsurprisingly, also the 8th stage is quite possible. And as we end this episode, we can see it was quite a successful episode. The fifth stage the first stage of this episode, was a bit difficult with Clarke, but thanks to Guillaume Boivin and the man, the myth, the legend, the GOAT, Christ Nijlands, we made it happen. And then stage 6, 7 and 8, thanks to Pogacar and Van Aert being really, really good riders, it was quite easy. So, thank you for watching and I'll see you at the next. Goodbye.